Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not a joke.
The notion of America decline has sparked a debate in international relations study. Some scholars argued that the decline of American hegemony had started prior to the 9/11 event, and the real decline was triggered by the incident. It was pointed out that America has declined since the end of the Cold War as it deprived the United States and its foreign policies, core principle, and future direction. Gupchan argued that U.S. foreign policy has no consensus and no guiding principle, hence America was simply running on the fumes of the Cold War. The situation was further exacerbated by the domestic debate in deciding the grand theme for American foreign policy between unilateralism and multilateralism. As America has tended to move back and forth with its domestic debate, China's rising has been underpinned by its military modernization, economic success, and the increase of its soft power worldwide. However, on the other side, some analysts have suggested that U.S. hegemony remained unchallenged, as the international structure has been long created by the U.S. since the Cold War. With this, it is argued that the rise of China will not pose a threat for the U.S. as they are embedded in the Western system, especially noting with Biden's foreign policy in facing China and rebuilding U.S. alliances, they believe that U.S. will remain the hegemon in the world order. So, with the ongoing debate, is America really weakening?
It wasn't so long ago in the history of man's voyage toward a better world that ships were carrying eager passengers toward the shores of a new nation that was just in the building.
Another war, and that's for me. This time America keeps out, and I know I will.
To those listening throughout Eastern Europe, I extend my warmest greetings and the goodwill of the American people.
The Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
As we will scrutinize thus the domestic debate of American foreign policy and China's rise has weakened the United States' strong position in the global order, there are two theoretical frameworks that we will be using. First is realism. According to Chang, the theoretical perspective of realism provides the most powerful explanation for the rise and fall of great powers through the concept of hegemony. Hegemony is defined as the possession of material power that gives the country leverage over the rest of the states, hence enabling it to exercise economic, political, and military domination in the international system. The realists see hegemony as a movement of power, hence the mechanism between the rising and declining hegemonic powers are very visible. This could be seen how the fall of hegemonic state will reduce the chances of international system stability. With this, a new competitor will arise to create a new system of hegemony. Although realism has been long criticized for being limited in defining hegemonic states primarily based on materialistic dimension of power, this theory is still best suited to explore how China's growing power may contribute to the decline of U.S. power, hence weakening its position in the international system.
According to the former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, the domestic structure tends to be taken as a given when it comes to the traditional conception of international relations, with foreign policy begins where the domestic structure ends. However, this may not be the case when it comes to unstable periods, as rules of the game may no longer contain a similar component of the international system. When the domestic structures are based on the fundamentally different conceptions of what is just, the conduct of international affairs grows more complex. Then, it becomes difficult even to define the nature of disagreement, because what disputes of foreign policy can no longer be considered a matter of merits, but instead become a matter of disagreement of values in domestic arrangements. With the ongoing instability of the U.S. political environment, it has become essential to shine some light into the domestic affairs of the United States in order to get a proper analysis to the existing dispute over foreign policy within the domestic level.
As we could see that China has become a great competitor of the United States in multifaceted dimensions, China's rise has been seen as a serious challenge to the United States' position. However, there are three factors that we would like to scrutinize in order to really assess whether China's rise is able to weaken America's position in the international order. Firstly, we need to consider how China's rise is actually happened and embedded in the Western-oriented system. According to Zhou, China realized that no state can modernize, develop, and be powerful without integrating into the capitalist system, which is the byproduct of the United States leadership ever since the Cold War. With this, the Western-oriented system is seen as valuable to China, and they rather to work with the system instead of seeking to overthrow it. This could be seen how the Chinese government has carried out a market economy in order to attain their domestic economic success. It is also reflected through their strategies in approaching other countries, for instance through the Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI project is very capitalistic in nature as it aims to enhance cooperation, trading, and investment between states. With this, it could be seen how China is advancing the capitalist practices in order to facilitate their own development. Looking how the BRI has opened opportunities and benefits for China, China has no choice besides than working along with the capitalist system. If China then continues to follow and be integrated into the existing capitalist-based market and the Western-oriented system, the United States leadership will remain strong as they have the power to influence the system. Secondly, Biden's foreign policy could also be one of the factors that strengthen the United States' position in the world order amidst China's peaceful rise. In his inaugural address, Biden emphasized how he would repair America's alliances and how US will engage actively in tackling the world's current challenges. He even addressed how American leadership will overcome the growing ambitions of China to rival the United States. His strong commitment in rebuilding alliances was also translated into concrete actions, especially through diplomacy. This could be seen how US has re-engaged with Europe through NATO, how the US has returned its commitment to the Paris Climate Accord, as well as how Biden shifts the US focus back in becoming ally with Japan, which helped America to improve its presence in Asia, hence making it harder for China to expel the US from the region. Thirdly, China's rise is also not seen as a threat to the United States due to the diverse domestic issues that China is currently facing. Domestic issues such as environmental degradation, income inequality, challenges to sustainable development, and sustenance of the Communist Party's legitimacy has forced China to maintain good ties with the US to ensure economic growth and political stability. This argument is in line with China's principle of peaceful rise, where it will maintain good relations with other countries in order to support its own development. With such diverse domestic issues, it is also argued that China has a long way to go to equal its power and also to weaken the United States' position. According to Zhou, it will take at least 25 years or longer for China to become a regional power, hence giving the US sufficient time to comprehend the implication of China's rise and to formulate a strategy before it reaches that point. Through the three affirmation arguments of how China is embedded in the Western-oriented system, Biden's policy in rebuilding alliances, as well as China's domestic issues, it could be seen how China's rise does not pose a threat to weaken the United States' position in the international order.
Without a doubt, the US has played a major role in the international world since the end of the Second World War. The attack on Pearl Harbor, which had ultimately dragged the US into the war, seemed to have pumped up and charged the American war machine from its isolated state and had never been turned off since. Instead, the US has been playing a major role as the new hegemon of the world, competing for supremacy against its communist rival across the ocean, juggling from one proxy war to another in the maintenance of national security and world peace. Nevertheless, the sudden fall of the Soviet Union in 1990 took this Cold War to an abrupt end, ultimately putting the US as the second sole hegemon of the world. The question now is, what's next? For the last 3 decades since the end of the Cold War, the US has been undergone a stage of adventurism, from the war against terrorism to tyrannical government to drug cartels. But regardless of whoever will be the next target for US adventurism, there have always been those among the populace and the government who seem to want to put the ongoing war machine to rest. A common word from the American people is that regardless of which party wins, the policy will always remain the same. The rise of Donald Trump into the presidency is considered by many to have broken this unwritten bipartisanship to US foreign policy. In his journal, Karan described how President Trump views the post-Cold War era. Successive administrations in Washington have pursued reckless visions of regional or global hegemony, especially in the Middle East, leaving the home front to languish and the nation open to ridicule. Through his America First policy, Trump instated that the government must first protect its citizens and promote their prosperity. Moreover, his long-standing impatience with alliances and hostility towards free trade and other multilateral approaches to international affairs has now found concrete, if inconsistent, expression in his presidency, exhibiting a rather harsh approach towards members of international organizations alike, from NATO to the AWHO. His governance also takes no interest in intervening in foreign conflicts, shown by his staunch rhetorics of pulling out all US troops from the Middle East as soon as possible. These American-centric policies have given rise to the long discredited population, which longed for the years of putting the needs of the Americans first and above all, and are growing tired of the never-ending adventurous operations of the US. Trump's administration has put the question of the future of US foreign policy back on the table once more, but the debate now involves not only those who partake in the seats of the cabinet and the chambers of the Congress, but also by the growing vocal population of the country itself. The recent 2020 election shows the ever-growing partisanship between the two parties. The new Biden administration will have the major task of refocusing the US foreign policy once more. A supporter of both US intervention in Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq, it will not be a surprise if President Biden will return to the old ways of US adventurism and reclaim its once slipping alliance during Trump's presidency. Also, it is to be predicted that Biden will put his best effort into maintaining US hegemony once more. However, nevertheless, the world is no longer within a unipolar state, and with that comes consequences and bigger tasks ahead of Biden to keep his empire in shape. Not only that, with Trump's presidency gave way for ideas of isolationism to re-enter the public's discussion, the US will have to convince its people that hegemony will be the best path for the interests of them all, with all of its benefits and consequences along the way. To conclude, The end of the Cold War has put the US as the world's sole hegemon and ushering in decades of unipolarity within the international system, including a big question to this great nation's future. Through its belief in exceptionalism, the US tries to be the benevolent hegemon, juggling its interests and maintaining global peace. But as time goes, so do new contenders arise to claim the position of the next hegemon. Although China's rise can be seen as a surprising turn of events and a possible threat towards US dominance, it is assured that China may not be ready to take on the position of an equal nor more powerful opposition in the short coming years. However, with the existing instability within the growing wariness of the population in maintaining its status as hegemon, the future of American hegemony may actually rest on its capabilities to sort its domestic issues out.